Welcome back to Why Comic Kickstarters Fail, guys. If this is your first time to the channel and you've missed any of the previous parts, do not worry, you can watch all of these videos completely individually. And if this is your first time to the channel, there's a link in the description to the playlist where you can start from the beginning. But if you were here last time, we're just going to crack straight on with this. Here we go. And those of you that joined last time will remember that, I have analysed a lot of Kickstarter campaigns for these set of videos. And in this video, we are going to be specifically talking about how to price, and in a lot of cases, how to incorrectly price your comics and graphic novels when coming to Kickstarter, because had a look at the averages of what first time Kickstarters put for their costs for people that want to pledge, and it seems like there is a correlation between not understanding the platform or not understanding what you can charge and how you can charge. So that's what we are going to look at today. So what I did is I looked at how many Kickstarters people had run before, whether this was their first time or second time, or in some cases 19 times, and then I looked at the average cost for the average digital comic cost, the hard copy cost, and if they were doing graphic novels, what the digital and the hardcover costs for those were as well. And what is interesting is people that ran their very first Kickstarters pretty much priced everything wrong, and I include myself in this. And if you haven't seen the original video, one of the reasons why I'm doing these is because I spectacularly failed my first Kickstarter campaign. I'm thinking about dipping my toe into it next time round, so I'm trying to learn from my mistakes and the mistakes of others. So if you look at the screen at the moment, you can see that when people are doing their first Kickstarter campaigns, what they've done is, again, myself included, the average cost for a digital comic is £3.50, and that's way too high. And for the hard copies, over £9. And again, hold my hands up completely for this. When I did my original floppy Kickstarter, I did do a £10 pledge for the hard copy of the comics, but it was issues 1 and 2 of my comic, and I think in retrospect that was my biggest mistake. What I should have done is I should have done a single Kickstarter for issue 1 of the comic, helped to build that audience, then done a second one for issue 2, but I decided to combine them together and just trying to utilize my core audience, which I discussed in last week's video, and it didn't work. So again, in retrospect, doing it again, I would do issue 1 on its own, then issue 2 on its own, with an option to repledge for issue 1 again if you just found the campaign and that kind of thing. And looking at the Kickstarters that from people doing the original ones, every single Kickstarter that I analysed where the average cost was £3.50 for a digital and £9 for a hard copy, they all failed completely. So that tells us that people are pricing their comics way too high when they're thinking about doing their first Kickstarter campaign. But what we can see is from the people that did their their first graphic novel as their first Kickstarter, and in this category of the people that I analysed, it was only one. They charged £7.20 for a digital version of it, which isn't too bad, but then £16, £19 for the hard copy. And again, not over the top for someone's Kickstarter, especially for a graphic novel, something that's going to be over 120 odd pages. So that succeeded. All the single comics actually failed. Then if we move down to the people that had already run a Kickstarter before and this was their second outing, as you can see, the cost for the digital version of their books was dramatically cheaper, and the hard copies as well. You talk £2.76 down from £3.51, both on the hard copy and the digital version. You're talking like a 33% drop in costs. And then looking at the graphic novels, digital cost of the graphic novels were £4.30, and the hard copy rose a little bit to £18.99, which again I think under £20, especially if you've done a Kickstarter before, is not out of the realms of possibility. But just dropping the cost of the actual comic versions down by 33%, only 50% of the comics actually failed, which is a massive jump. But then if we go down to the people that had already run 2 before and this was their third outing, those digital costs and hard copy costs came down even more. And what they did is that pushed the amount of comics that were funded up to 82%. But where it gets really interesting is the people that had run their 4th and 5th campaigns, and 6th even, should I say. And this is where people are kind of in their groove with regards to knowing what they're doing. They've worked out their costs beforehand, and they've cracked the Kickstarter code, and they've hit that sweet spot of charging £2, or in the case of average of £1 for that that 6 campaign tier. You're talking around £2 for a digital version, which I think is bang on the money. And you're talking around £4.30 for a hard copy. I think that is the perfect amount, especially, you know, if, you know, you've never done a Kickstarter before, because, you know, charging around £4 is probably around where you want to be, purely because you need to add in, you know, the postage and shipping costs and costs for stuff like, you know, hard copy envelopes, that kind of thing, which are going to push those costs up by, you know, another £2.5, £3. So you're probably asking someone that, you know, that's outside of your core audience, that, you know, that don't know you as a creator, you know, they're taking a chance on you. You're asking them to pay, you know, £6.5, £7, you know, on a creator they've never heard. And I think, you know, as long as you don't go over that £7 threshold for the postage and the actual copy of the comic itself, I think some people are going to take a chance on you. And if you look at the notes that I've put there, you know, for the people that have done, you know, 5 and 6 campaigns before, you know, looking at that sweet spot, 100% of the comics were funded. So what I want you to take away from this video, well, you know, if we look at the costs of, you know, the average digital comic from the ones that I've analysed, the average is working out around £2.31, you know, across the board, and the average cost for a hard copy comic pledge is around £5.93. But if this is your first Kickstarter out the gate, I suggest keeping your digital comic pledges around £2 and keeping your hard copy pledge around the £4 mark. And the reason for this is, yes, you can charge a little bit more, but again, if this is your first time out of the gate, you are a new creator and you're asking someone to take a chance on someone that, no offense, they've probably never heard of. And the more you creep your prices up, the more you're going to get people umming and ahhing that should they take a chance on you. And when we talk about graphic novels, you know, the average cost of a digital graphic novel is around £5.13. I think you could push that up to £6 and no one would, you know, have a go at you for doing that. I think, you know, between £5 and £6 for a digital version of a graphic novel is completely fair. And the average cost for a successful hard copy graphic novel pledge is around £14, which I think's pretty low. I think, you know, if you're working at that £16 mark, you know, even creeping up to, you know, £18, £19, I think if you keep your, you know, 120-page graphic novel under the £20 mark, I think that's going to do really, really well. What we need to remember is, you know, we need to price these comics to move. And I know some people are going to disagree with me when I say this, but, you know, not only is Kickstarter a crowdfunding platform, but it's also a pre-ordering platform as well. And, you know, I've said this before on the channel and I'll say it again, you know, when I tend to do comic cons, I do sell between, you know, 260 and 270 comics, you know, at a show. And that's not me, you know, giving myself a pat on the back, I promise you, because I don't consider my comics to be any better than anyone else that is in Comic Village. The reason why I sell so many, well, one of the reasons why I sell so many, is my comics are priced to move. Now, I sell my comics for, you know, the regular size comics, you know, for £3 each. You know, the graphic novels, you know, the larger books are a little bit more expensive, but a regular 24-page comic is £3. And the reason I do this is because they are priced to move. You know, you go to a Comic Con, how many tables can you go to where you can buy 3 individual comics and still get change for £10? I don't know many, so that's what I do, and that's how I've built up my readership over the last few years, build up that support. And this is what you kind of need to parlay into Kickstarter as well, because, you know, if you've got a £4 book and, you know, a £6 book on there by 2 different creators, the quality looks, you know, as good as each other. Both the creators are, you know, again, no offense, fairly unknown. If you've got, you know, one pledge this month, what are you going to pledge on? You're probably going to take a chance on the £4 one. So I think this is the kind of mentality that you need to think about when you're, you know, you're working out the cost for your Kickstarter. So yeah, just to clarify, going forward, I think you need to keep your digital comic pledges around £2 if this is your first time doing a Kickstarter. Your hard copy comic pledges around £4, and if this is your first time doing a Kickstarter and you've got a graphic novel coming out, I think you need to keep your digital version, you know, around the $5.99 mark, and a hard copy, you know, around $18.99 or less if you can. And also looking at the data that I put together, you know, the average first time Kickstarter, you know, this is going to vary, you know, up and down a little bit, but, you know, first Kickstarter out of the gate gets around 97 pledges. So, you know, if you work to, you know, around 100 pledges that you're potentially going to get, you know, leveraging, you know, your core audience and people discovering, you know, your campaign, and hopefully if you're doing all the pre-engagement that I've talked about, we can push that up even more. But, you know, if you work around, you know, the 97 to 100 pledges, hopefully more, and work around those costs that you're going to get for your pledges, you know, the £2, the £4, that kind of thing, or if you're doing the graphic novels, you know, the $5.99 and $18.99, that kind of thing, at least you can try and work out what your expectations of what you're going to achieve from your very first campaign, so you don't overextend yourself and you don't do what I did and fall flat on your face first time out. Hopefully you found that interesting. If you have and you've stayed this long in the video, don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe. It does help the channel. I will see you in the next video, and remember, if I can make comics, anyone can. Take care. Bye bye.